I believe Dr. Anderson has joined us, and I'm going to see if Keith Tatum joins us here in a moment, and then we will get started. Give everyone a little extra time for technology issues.
Ms. Wangeman, as you give them time, let me first say welcome, and we are excited to see everyone here and to listen to everyone this evening. Anyone that I haven't met with that is online, if there's someone that I haven't met with, do know that I extend the invitation to meet with you at any point. So feel free to give me a call if you want to learn more about the district, or an email following this forum. Again, thank you for making time available, and we look forward to learning more about everyone this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. And do we have Keith Tatum on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Great. Okay. That means we have the 3 candidates I was expecting tonight, so we will go ahead and get started with our forum tonight. And good evening, and thank you for joining the District Citizens Advisory Council's Candidate Forum for the 501 Board of Education candidates. As everyone knows, the 501 School District will be having an election for board members on November 2nd. And so tonight we hope to introduce you to the candidates who are running for those seats on the board, in hopes that that will help you in your decision making. So first, let me introduce our officers for the DCAC group. Vice President is Sean Guile, who is a parent at Topeka High. Sean, are you on? I'm not sure that he is. Our study coordinator is Sanella Hasanovic-Little. She is a representative from Topeka West High School. I am Melissa Wangeman Mag. I'm serving as the DCAC president this year, and I represent Topeka West High School as well. And then we have Ivan Gruder, who is our secretary and parliamentarian and past president, and he also represents Topeka High, and he will be assisting with the forum tonight. And I'm going to turn the podium over to Dr. Gruder to explain his role in timekeeping for the questions.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to all of our candidates and participants who are here tonight. I am serving as the timekeeper throughout the session. We have agreed to a set number of minutes for each person to speak. I will keep the time, and I will give you a 1-minute warning. And then after that, when you have 5 seconds, I will say 5 seconds, count down the seconds on my fingers, and when I'm done, your time will have expired. Does anybody have any questions about the timekeeping? Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so according to the Shawnee County Election Office, 501 has the following candidates who have filed for a seat on the Board of Education. Position 1 is Lisa Schmidt and John R. Williams. John R. Williams is with us tonight. Lisa Schmidt, I did not hear from until just a couple of hours ago, and she does have another commitment. In District 2, we have running for a seat Andrew Foreman, who did RSVP a yes that he could attend, but then he had a work commitment pop up, so he cannot attend. We do have Randall Schumacher with us tonight for District 2. Alan Smith is also a candidate. I have not heard from Mr. Smith about attending the forum. And then in District 3, we have Keith Tatum running for a board position, and Mr. Tatum is with us this evening, and I appreciate you all finding time in your calendar and your schedule for joining us. I think we'll go ahead and get started with questions, and I should give you a proper introduction, but I'm going to take it easy on myself and let you introduce yourselves and give you the opportunity to introduce yourselves and also explain why you are running for a seat on the Board of Education. And we're going to allow each candidate 5 minutes to speak in terms of introducing yourself and explaining why you're running. And we'll just go ahead and start in alphabetical order because it's the easiest for me. So Randall Schumacher, will you get us started?
Yep, just have to unmute myself. So my name is Randy Schumacher. I'm a native Topekan, graduate of Topeka High, and a local pediatrician for the last 10 years. I'm a proud parent of 3 kids attending 501 schools. I appreciate the opportunity to speak during this District Citizens Advisory Council Candidate Forum on my candidacy for the 501 Board of Education. So a little more background about myself. I grew up in Topeka. I attended Randolph Robinson and Topeka High. I graduated back in 2000, and then attended University of Kansas, where I met my wife, who some of you may know given her roles in the district, and then went to KU Medical School before completing my residency in pediatrics at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. I then returned back to Topeka 10 years ago to practice as a pediatrician locally. Professionally, I serve at Stormont as the medical director in our outpatient pediatrics. I'm also the chairman of our credentials committee on the outpatient side. Outside of the hospital, when I first got back to Topeka, I served on the board for the local chapter of the March of Dimes. And currently I'm a member of the board of the TARC board of directors. And really, as far as my candidacy, I think it comes down to one of my core beliefs that what I do outside of my office day to day, week to week, is as important as what I do while I see patients day to day. And I think that's become more apparent over the last year and a half as we have dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that have arisen with that. And so I'm running for the 501 Board of Education to be able to continue to help keep our children and staff safe in school so that we as a community can continue to prepare them for excellence. I want to be able to work on early literacy and increasing the percentage of students at proficient or advanced on the kindergarten through 3 reading assessments. And I want to make sure all students have the chance to demonstrate growth to help close some of the achievement gaps that we know have widened over the last 18 months. But I also want to do that knowing that the children, the staff, the families of TPS 501 are safe, healthy, and emotionally supported. I do acknowledge that doing this and educating almost 14,000 students is complex, and it takes a lot of cooperation on the board, as well as cooperations with students, parents, teachers, staff, community members. And I value that input and collaboration so that I can engage and advocate for the family's needs, but also the students' needs. So I appreciate your time. I hope that tonight will be helpful, and hopefully we can have some good dialogue and discussion. And that's it.
Thank you. Moving on to Keith Tatum.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Keith Tatum. And for those that I haven't met yet, I am a Topeka native. My formative years have been spent here in Topeka, and I'm a graduate of Topeka 501 schools. I'm a Topeka High grad, and I went on to go to Washburn University, and I earned a bachelor's degree in psychology, and then decided at some point later on to pursue a master's degree. And so I went to the University of Kansas, and I completed my master's degree in public administration. And those two things, psychology and public administration, really kind of sum up my professional ideology and view of the world, because I want to understand how things work, how things tick, in the effort of being able to manage public processes for the benefit of the common good. And I see the school district as being one of the things that we can do to further the public good, and what more than to invest in the lives of children. So I have children. I between my wife and I, we have 10. There are 4 who are going to Topeka Public Schools. I've got 1 at Topeka High, 2 at Robinson Middle School, and 1 at McEachran Elementary. So I'm very well invested in the livelihood of this district from my personal experience and from my kids' experience. And I'm running because I believe in the power of public education. And it has been a contributing factor to my success in my life professionally. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the foundation that I received from my education in Topeka Public Schools. I currently am the Director of Training and Staff Development at the Kansas Neurological Institute, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Washburn University. I teach for the Department of Family and Human Services. So a lot of my roles that I have kind of gravitated to professionally and educationally, academically, have had to do with empowering marginalized people, those folks in our communities that have disabilities, or they're people of color, or they are children, folks that are wonderful contributors to our community, but may need extra supports in order to do the things that they envision themselves doing, and children are certainly no exception to that. My vision for the Topeka School District is to help us be the best that we can be with supporting children and other professionals in the classroom, teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, helping them all to be as successful as possible in the classroom, because when they are successful, our children in the classrooms are also successful. So it's a kind of a symbiosis in which if we support one side, the other side benefits as well. But really focusing on pre-K, helping our young kids, even before they get to kindergarten, have the tools and the resources they need in order to be successful from that very first day in kindergarten, then continuing to support them so that they are also successful when it comes to passing the third grade reading and math scores, and then also maintaining and continuing to make progress on our high school graduation rates. And I know we've done a fantastic job as a district in accomplishing that over the course of the past several years. So there's a lot of good things going on with this district. I absolutely want to use all my skills and tools to contribute to it and help USD 501 be the best that it can be for all of our children.
Thank you. Reverend Williams, you want to take up the end?
Okay, thanks. First of all, thank you to DCAC for hosting this forum this evening, giving us an opportunity to share our thoughts. Of the three candidates so far, I'm the only one that's not a native Topekan. I'm originally from Kansas City, Kansas. Most of my public education was in Kansas City, Kansas public schools. I am a proud graduate of Wyandotte High School, just celebrated 50 years. I believe in public education. I am one of the proverbial 77%. My mother was a single parent, raised 9 kids. All 9 of us are college educated. Since I moved to Topeka in 1979, I've been very actively involved in activities within Topeka Public Schools, beginning with when I first moved here. They were revisiting the Brown decision, and I became affiliated with a group called Friends of Brown 2, which led to the creation of Williams, Scott, and Meadows. I believe in being involved with youth activities, regardless of what that is. So one of the 2 of my experiences, and you guys have to excuse me, I hate talking about myself, was nearly 25 years, I was a junior achievement classroom volunteer for their personal economics and economics for success program at both Eisenhower and Robinson. And the reason those 2 schools were the schools in which I volunteered was because I couldn't find any volunteers in the community that wanted to go into those schools because of the demographics or reputation of those schools. The only reason I didn't make it to 25 years is when I retired from the state of Kansas, 2010, I went to go work for 501 and ended up down at the Juvenile Detention Center, and the educational coordinator at the time told me I needed to be there all day. So I was 1 year short of my 25-year commitment to junior achievement. The other one is Big Brothers Big Sisters. I was a board secretary, Big Brother, and a group big And I still maintain a relationship with my little brother, who is a product of Highland Park High School, who recently completed his PhD program. I am committed. I'm consistent in my commitment, and I'm constant in my commitment. I believe that 501 is the best school district in this country. I have gone to state and national meetings of school boards, and I will say this: Topeka Public Schools doesn't need to take a backseat to anyone. And I just want to continue moving up and onward in terms of what we have to offer our students to make our students prepared for a lifetime of excellence once they leave our schools. But I tell everybody all the time, my greatest role in this community has been a husband, a father, and a grandfather. All three of my daughters are products of Topeka Public Schools, as well as my two sons. And I got a granddaughter who's a second grader over at Williams Magnet this time. And with that, I will end my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. All right, now past introductions, let's go ahead and ask some questions. How about reverse order a little bit, and we'll start with Keith Tatum, and then go to Reverend Williams and finish with Schumacher. Can you hear me okay with the feedback? Am I the only one getting the feedback, or?
No,
Good. Okay.
I think we can hear it, but it's okay.
Okay. All right. So question one, what current programs or goals do you believe are important to continue if elected to the Board of Education? In other words, what current programs or goals that are being pursued by the Board of Education now are important for you to continue if you join the Board of Education?
And each person will have 2 minutes, and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
I wanted to ask for some clarification. Are you talking about current initiatives that the board has been discussing, or are you talking about recent programs that have been put into place, like over the past few years?
You can touch on either one. If you want to talk about programs initiated by the Board of Education that you want to continue, or other ideas for, yes, initiatives.
Okay. I'd like to talk about one that I know Dr. Anderson's probably very proud about, but TCALC and the College Prep Academy, that is really just a crowning achievement of USD 501. I think that not only should Dr. Anderson be very proud of that institution, but also everybody on the board who contributed in making it happen. And definitely, I know the teachers and the students that are there every week are very grateful to have that kind of a resource. I think it is something that a lot of the outlying districts don't have. I don't know how unique it is in terms of this region or in the state, but I'm guessing not a lot of districts have that kind of a resource, but just the ability to offer our high achieving students the opportunity to earn college credit and to begin making inroads on a path a career path that interests them, I think is a fantastic program. I'm glad that we have it going here. I do have a daughter who is a TCALC student, so I do hear a lot about it, and I'm impressed with it, and I want to do what I can as a board member to keep that program going for as long as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. And to clarify, we're doing 2 minutes for the questions, even though we did 5 minutes on the introductions. I failed to explain that to you. And I do want to tell you that I had a daughter at TCALC as well. So it was a very positive program for her. Okay, so turning to Reverend Williams. Again, the question is, and I guess we're going to have a little bit of latitude with the question, what current programs or initiatives or goals do you believe are important to continue if elected to the Board of Education?
Well, I'm going to sound a little redundant, but I agree with Mr. Tatum on TCALC and college prep. Two, I believe, worthwhile initiatives that have started since my getting on the board in 2013. this past spring, our College Prep Academy presented at the National Association School Board Annual Conference, and they did an outstanding job. Mr. Tatum's daughter was one of the 4 students. And also, not only that, our dual language program, the expansion of it, as well as the early childhood development program that we have. Those 3 areas I would like to continue to see it develop and grow. And like I said, we have nowhere to go in Topeka Public Schools but up, and I think we will get there. So that would be those 3 areas.
Thank you, Reverend Williams. Okay, Dr. Schumacher, your turn. Do you need me to rephrase the question again?
No, I think I'm clear on it.
Okay.
And I appreciate the work that the board has done, that the board members such as Reverend Williams, because it really is continuing to build on the shoulder of giants. And I think the dual language program, in my day-to-day practice, to be able to connect with the different patients in the community. Unfortunately, I do not speak Spanish, but that ability is invaluable. And I see it even in my kids. Their friends who come from households where English isn't the primary language, the ability for them to be able to connect would be so huge. And so I don't want that to be something that we lose sight of. Something that might not be as well known, but some of the health services that have started at Topeka High over the last few years, as a pediatrician, that's always going to be something that I support. And I think that when we look at some of the social determinants of health, and again, kind of what I do outside of the office mirrors what I do in the office. And we know that providing care and access to care where you are, when you are, makes care a lot easier to get and probably a higher quality of care. So continuing to support that and maybe expand that. And then, I think even more broadly with TCALC, but other pathways to success. So so many kids that I see go to Washburn Tech and they do these different things where, they might not be going on to college, but some sort of secondary education after high school. And I think continuing to support and grow that so that they can be successful in whatever field that they choose.
Thank you. All right, moving on to question 2. We just talked about the current programs in the district. Well, what new programs or goals would you like to see enacted? So again, what new goals or new initiatives or new programs would you like to see if you were elected to the Board of Education? And we'll start with Reverend Williams. Oh, you're on mute.
You need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Safety and security is a high priority of mine, and I, because of my architectural background, I'm very sensitive to when I see something that seems potentially hazardous down the road. So one of the things that I would like to see take place is another evaluation of our traffic patterns at all of our schools, and have our facilities department go school by school to make sure that our students coming and going from school, the buses and so on and so forth, that there aren't any potential hazards. That would be one item that I would like to see done if I'm successfully reelected to my position. And then also a continuing increase of our high school graduation rate. We were moving in a positive direction, but when Mr. COVID hit, it kind of took us back a little bit. So I'd like to see us regain the momentum there. That would be it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Schumacher, what new programs or initiatives or goals would you like to see enacted?
Yeah, I think along with kind of supporting the health of the students, I think also supporting the staff. And one of the things I think that, maybe has come more to light, but I think has always been there, has been some of the challenges that working mothers face with childcare and appropriate programs. And so with the advancement that's been made with early childhood education and that kind of stuff, I think continuing to support that, but maybe even providing or supplementing childcare for even some of our staff in the district, our working mothers. We know that with the pandemic, there's been a huge staffing shortage. I see it every day in my clinic. And I know through talking with parents who are teachers that their roles as teachers have changed because they have to wear maybe 7 hats instead of 5. And I think that the burnout that comes from that, will only lead to more attrition. And so I think what the district has done with the retention bonus is huge, but I think also thinking outside the box on other ways that we can support and keep high quality staff, because only through building that framework of high quality staff will we get successful students.
Thank you. And the next question is a short one, and you may have already answered it in your introduction, but if you wouldn't mind clarifying, would each of you state whether you do have children in the 501 school district now or have in the past?
Did Keith get to answer question 2?
Did I skip Keith? Yes, I did. I am so sorry.
Okay,
Thank you, Dr. Berger. Boy, good thing we've got Ivan watching me here. Sorry about that. Mr. Tatum, please answer number 2, which I can restate for you. What new programs or goals would you like to see enacted?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to give my input on this question. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Dr. Schumacher. I think the retention bonuses were fantastic. I think we still have a challenge in the district in recruiting and retaining skilled, competent teachers. We are at a pretty critical low right now when it comes to having teachers available, sufficient numbers of teachers in the classrooms. And I think COVID, and to kind of bridge between what Dr. Schumacher said and what Reverend Williams said, I think that's been very much impacted by the presence of the COVID pandemic in our schools as well as in our communities. I understand that a lot of teachers are hesitant about coming to work in a classroom environment because of the possibility of the spread of infection. With that said, we still need to teach our kids. So being able to come up with strategies for retention and I have a few ideas for those, but being able to provide for the full complement of teaching professionals in our classrooms is going to be critical for us going forward. It is absolutely one of our existential crises.
All right, thank you, and I apologize again. So I think you've already heard the next question, everyone, and we don't need to go in a straight line on this one. You can just answer if you have children in the 501 school district now or have in the past.
Yes.
Yes to both.
Yes, I do. I have 3 kiddos, 1 at Jardine and 2 at Meadows.
Thank you.
I have a granddaughter and a bunch of cousins and nieces and nephews in the district.
You've got the district covered then.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to question 4, and we'll pick up with Keith Tatum first. Are there any particular issues you want to champion in the school district if elected? So again, what issues would you like to champion or push if elected?
Sure. I would really like to champion closing the achievement gap that exists along racial lines. Students of color tend to be a little slower behind the curve in catching up to their white counterparts. Why is that? Are we examining the reasons why those things are occurring sufficiently, and are we putting structures of support and safeguarding into place to help our young kids of color, young Black students, young brown students be able to make the gains academically as compared to their white counterparts? This is critically important. And there's so many other things that are also critically important, but this is one that is an issue that I'm going to champion because it jibes with my work in the community as being a racial equity educator, and being able to look at those processes and partner and collaborate with other community members, people that do this kind of work that could help give great advice and suggestions and guidance to us as we move forward with trying to solve these issues. That is going to be one of the things that I'm going to be a champion of during my tenure on the school board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, how about Reverend Williams? Again, the question is, are there any particular issues that you want to champion in the school district?
Again, academic achievement, closing the achievement gap. But in order to do that, we have to recruit and retain high quality teachers. And so we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to convince teachers and other educational professionals that Topeka Public Schools is the district of choice to spend their careers. And I'll do everything within my power to make sure that we do that.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Williams. Dr. Schumacher.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on in the intro. I also think the achievement gap over the last 18 months, dependent on students' access to remote learning, home support, their degree of engagement, that achievement gap most likely widened, and some of the disparities, racially, financially, students with special needs, students that need physical therapy, occupational therapy. We know that they were most likely affected more over the last 18 months, and that achievement gap has widened. But I also think when I think about champion, I think of it as kind of like a greater cause. And I think for me, it's champion. I want to champion the power of 501 and Topeka Public Schools. I think in our community, what I see day to day, people, when they're looking for a good school district, they don't tend to look at 501, but knowing the power of the staff and the students and the enrichment that I gained at 501, and like Keith had said before, how day-to-day interactions with my colleagues, with my patients, with my parents are informed by what I learned and what I lived growing up in 501, and I hope that that's continuing for my children and for all the students in 501. And that's really what I want to champion, is to continue to be an advocate for not only public education, but for the unique opportunities that 501 provides.
Great, thank you. Okay, next, in case you're wondering how many questions, there are 9. If it's getting exhausting, let me know. But we are now on question 5. So if elected, how do you plan to engage with families, students, and public school staff? And we'll start with Reverend Williams. And again, if elected, well, you're already elected, but if re-elected, how do you plan to engage with families, students, and staff?
Well, I will continue to do what I've always done. I make it a point to get around every school year, to visit all of the schools. I believe that it is my responsibility as a school board member to be aware of what's going on in our schools. I make it a point, where my schedule permits, to not only go to high school commencements, but middle school promotions, as well as all the way down to pre-K promotions. I run into parents in the community whenever I go to Walmart, which is the best place to meet people, and just ask, how's the district serving your students' needs? So I will continue to do that. I believe in being up close and personal, behind the scenes, and doing what's necessary to make sure that we can have in our minds that we're serving all of our patrons and our teachers and doing a great, fantastic job, and they're sitting back saying, pay attention to us. So the best way to do it is just to reach out, which like I said, I'll continue to do.
Great, thank you. Dr. Schumacher, if elected, how do you plan to engage with families, students, and staff?
Yeah, so that's, as Reverend Williams had alluded to, I think getting out in the schools and devoting time, and, I've actually developed time in my schedule week to week to be able to say, okay, this half day every week, I'm going to go spend time in a school. I do think my position and my profession allows me to, every day I ask, 15 or 20 kids, how's school going? And, what's working, what's not working. And of course, parents are quick to answer as well. And that's not always 501, but you do get a sense for the pulse of public education and kind of what's working and what's not working. And it's never in a, would I do that in a threatening manner or expect X, Y, or Z. And I hope that if elected, my position wouldn't change, what they tell me. But I do think that's another avenue, getting out there in the schools, but also being able to just talk to day to day. And, I try to avoid Walmart as much as possible, because I do see all my patients at Walmart, I feel like. But outside of that school realm where maybe they're a little intimidated because it's Reverend Williams, but, just when you see him out in the community or when I see him at work, just engaging.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tatum, if elected, how do you plan to engage with families, students, and staff?
I once learned that leadership, 90% of leadership is just showing up. And I think that's really the crux of making myself available when it comes to connecting with community members, particularly parents and students of the district. I'm not going to have a passive open door policy that says, well, I'm here. If you want to talk to me about something, then come find me. I'm going to be showing up in the locations where there are events and other gatherings where I can talk to teachers, where I can talk to students, where I can talk to parents and other concerned community members about what's happening in the district, the progress that the district is making and the progress that students are making. And I'm going to be actively seeking those opportunities to engage with members of our community. So to me, just carving out time, and we're all busy, but this is important. This is pretty important. We've got to get this right the first time around 100% of the time, because this is the next generations of our world, our community, our society, our world. So being able to be in a position of, like Reverend Williams said, having close contact, meeting with people so that people get to know me, they recognize me, and they know that I'm accessible, not just when they call upon me, but that I'm going to be around where they are during the events that they're at, and we can get to know each other better that way.
Great, thank you. I am going to skip the question I had on my list and take one that I received in the comments. So let's start with Dr. Schumacher with this one. And the question is, what would be one of the biggest challenges for you personally to serve on the Board of Education?
That's great. I was just writing down sacrifice. So it's a sacrifice. So we talk about being there, being, as Reverend Williams said, committed, consistent, and constant. And that constant is hard, especially if you have 4 other plates that you're balancing on your fingers and toes. And so not dropping one of those place can be hard, but so I think for me, it's the sacrifice of, time at home, time with my family, time outside of work that generally is at a premium as well. But I think to me that this calling is important enough to make that sacrifice for time and effort and that kind of stuff, because I do think that 501 is worth it, and I definitely think the students of 501 are worth it.
Thank you. Next, the same question for, let me see where I'm at. Mr. Tatum, what would be the biggest challenge for you personally in serving on the board?
Sure. I would agree with what Randy just mentioned. I think balancing time is pretty critically important. But I learned a long time ago, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. So busy people tend to know how to make everything fit and how to make things work out. We've only all got 24 hours in a day, but there are people who are pretty adept at managing their time during those 24 hours. I certainly strive to be one of those people. And I don't necessarily think that this is a either or situation. I think this is a both and situation. And because my kids are in 501 schools currently, that means that I can go with my kid to, an event that the school is having and also be there to talk to other people from the community, other parents and other students that happen to be at that same event. So I don't think this is a mutually exclusive decision. You've got to plan ahead. You've got to use foresight and preparation in order to make this work. But I think this can absolutely work for each and every one of us on the school board, because our families are also important. The school district and the community is also is important as well. But I think we can do both together.
Thank you. Reverend Williams, you're last up on the question. What is the biggest challenge for you personally in serving on the board?
The biggest challenge for me personally for serving, being effective. That's one of my core beliefs, is being effective, making a difference. That's what I seek to do in the lives of our young people, making sure, again, that the teachers that have been entrusted with educating them, preparing them for life beyond school, my role and understanding my role. But as far as, comment was made about time and so on and so forth, me and my wife, we believe in the power of us. So we're in an agreement. So I'm the face, but I couldn't do this without her. And so I already, counted the cost in terms of time, and otherwise I would have never put my hat in the ring back in 2013. So being on the school board is actually an extension of my ministry. So, yeah.
Appreciate it. Okay. The next question came from a parent on the DCAC, because this has been a topic of discussion for us relating to broadband. So broadband or internet access to the 501 students proved to be challenging during the remote education that we had in the midst of the COVID pandemic. What can the Board of Education do to help provide broadband access to all 501 students? Let's start with Keith Tatum.
Well, I think this is such an important question because it really kind of speaks to the contemporary challenges of where we find ourselves, both in the year 2021 and in the midst of the pandemic, where remote learning, 2019 would have thought remote learning was a crazy idea, pretty widespread, but in 2021, we know that to be much different. So it really comes down to thinking about these challenges and trying to create some realistic and creative solutions for meeting the needs of students who are going to need remote access, and to which broadband, having broadband capability is going to be critically important for them keeping up with their studies and making progress academically. So what are some of those solutions? Those are things that as a board, we're going to need to talk about and figure out what are the viable options at our disposal. How much do these things cost? How feasible is it for us to put policies into place that are going to maximize student access to broadband for remote learning? These are all things. I don't have all the answers to these questions, but I do know that the process starts by asking good questions, and these type of questions are good for us to think about and to consider, because they're real world issues, and we need to be committed to solving them.
Thank you. Reverend Williams, I'll ask you to answer the question again. And we're talking about the broadband access and the challenges that we saw during the pandemic, and what can the Board of Education do to help provide broadband access to all 501 students?
Well, when Mr. COVID hit and we had to go into remote learning, one of the positives out of the negative situation was that it got us to see exactly where we were as a relation. And we had some initiatives, and part of that was to engage our community partners. And a lot of our community partners stepped up to the plate and helped out. And but we still have a long way to go to make sure that all of our students have equal access to the digital world in which we live in. And it's going to take all of us, not only the board, it's going to take administrators, it's also, again, parents as well as community members working together to make sure our kids have all the resources that they need to further their educational pursuits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Schumacher, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I think Reverend Williams and Keith had stated pretty clearly, and I think, again, the safety net that exists, I think a big hole that we found in that safety net was internet access back 19 months ago or whatever that was now, and being able to be creative in solutions kind of at that time and develop partnerships. But as Reverend Williams said, I think for us, a big part of it is advocating and pointing to this is why. And so how do we get there? Is it broadband access, or is it down the road, 5G access? There's going to be other ways to provide high-speed internet to places and areas that traditionally wouldn't be served. And I think being creative with how we pursue that and who we partner with in pursuing that, I think is key.
Okay, thank you. So the broadband access really became a question during the pandemic. So let's turn and talk a little bit about the pandemic, or how about if we were to enter into another pandemic? What would be your suggestions as a board member to manage the effects of the pandemic on public education? And we'll start with Reverend Williams.
Do you mind repeating that question? I want to make sure.
Sure. If the 501 school district were to enter into another pandemic, what would be your suggestions as a board member to manage the effects of the pandemic on public education?
I fully understand what we're up against. As a professional designer, I'm a problem solver. Part of the first step in solving any problem is identify what the problem is. And we got to have all of the partners buy in and agree that we're on the same team. We're not fighting against each other. And just be aware of the progress and the effects that, like you said, the pandemic, whichever pandemic that might be, is having, and making sure we're all in agreement that what this is really all about is our kids and their education. And if we stay focused on the goal, we'll get there, and we'll get there a lot sooner working together than, it's easier to go downstream than it is to go upstream.
Okay. Dr. Schumacher, do you want to take the question again? What would be your suggestions as a board member to manage the effects of a pandemic and the effects on public education?
Yeah, so I think with hindsight, as we had discussed, how the achievement gap has widened, probably widened over the last 18 months with remote learning, access to broadband, access to, somebody at home to keep us on task. I think trying to keep everybody safe and healthy. And back in March 2020, that with kind of the unknown that Reverend Williams had said, it meant kind of going to remote. But I think having plans and systems in place, if we know what that pandemic is and what is causing it, trying to keep kids in school, I think, is priority number one. And as I spoke to at a board meeting a few, kind of at the beginning of the school year, with universal masking, that's just a tool to keep kids in school. And I think doing what we can now, but also if we were facing another pandemic, to try to keep who we can, which I think the district did well with the micro classrooms, that kind of stuff last year, so that we can try to stop the widening of that gap and hopefully continue to work on closing it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tatum, again, if we were to enter into another pandemic, I wouldn't want to wish that on us, but what would be your suggestions as a board member for managing the effects of a pandemic on public education?
Well, if there was another pandemic that hits, I believe that this school district would be in pretty decent shape, because this school district in our current pandemic has already put policies and practices in place that have done very well in keeping folks safe in our school buildings. We've got a template, a blueprint that's already been created that we can follow, and the board and the administration have done a great job in charting that course. And so there are things that we could probably do better, things that we could learn to do more effectively and efficiently than the first time around. Things that have already been mentioned, increasing broadband access for students that can't get into the classroom. But I agree with what Dr. Schumacher mentioned about safety. Our first priority is keeping everyone in the classroom environment as safe as they possibly can be. That's students, that's teachers, that's paraprofessionals, other employees of the district that are in that environment. We have to keep everybody safe first, and then the learning can proceed the way that it's supposed to. So being able to do a lot of the things for the masking and encouraging folks to be vaccinated, sanitizing, social distancing, these are all things that the district is doing well with right now and has been, and the data is there to prove it. So another pandemic it could happen, but it's going to be something I believe we can feel confident about our abilities to navigate through.
Thank you. All right, that we've reached our last question before we do closing comments. And the last question, we'll start with Dr. Schumacher. How will you address differences of opinions that occur between board members?
Yeah, so I know that differences of opinions exist, day to day, and I think for me it's about collaboration. So every day in my work and my practice, I'm collaborating with parents and I'm collaborating with patients, whether it's, deciding what to do to treat X, Y, and Z, or just talking about how can we get Johnny to bed better, on weeknights. And there's always difference of opinions, but it's listening, respecting the other opinions, and it's acknowledging. But then, I think through those three things, we can then collaborate. And, as I said in my opening remarks, listening to the other board members, but also listening to the parents, the students, the staff, I think are important to have all those different views and to be able to have that kind of worldview on what our district is doing and where it's going. And, I think listening and respecting others' opinions.
Good to hear. Thank you. Mr. Tatum, how will you address differences of opinions that might occur between board members?
Sure. One thing I do know throughout all my years is that anytime you put two people into a room together, they're going to find something to disagree on. That's going to happen on the board. And so I agree with Randy's comments. Having understanding for one another is important, but I think where it really starts is having a attitude of generosity and an attitude of appreciation for one another. You have to have the heart to seek collaboration and to seek understanding. Those are things that you're not going to really do very well in practice unless you have that come from within. And so I hope everybody on our board has that quality within themselves where we may disagree on points, right, but that we can sit down and talk about those differences and find ways to move forward together, because at the end of the day, we're all there for one reason, and it's to benefit the children who are a part of the 501 district.
Thank you. Reverend Williams, how will you or how do you now address differing opinions between board members?
Well, I go back to my statement I made in one of the previous questions. I believe in the power of us, and the power of we, which means there's no I, no you, but both viewpoints are necessary to come to a consensus. And I believe in coming to a consensus. We are the board made up of 7 individuals, and all opinions of every individual has value, and it's very necessary for us to reach the difficult decisions that come to our plate every board meeting. So I don't have a problem with a person's opinion different than mine, because at the end of the day, we got to be in agreement what's best for our kids. So.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our questions, except for one that I skipped to incorporate one that I received in the chat. I don't think I have any other questions in the chat. Let me double check. So how about we move to closing comments, and that will be the opportunity for candidates to just give some closing comments about yourself and why you're seeking the position. And how about we incorporate the question that I skipped over? So Dr. Gruder, you want to give them 7 minutes for closing? And why don't you incorporate this question? The question that I had skipped was, what assets do you think you bring to the Board of Education, such as your education or experiences or skills? So if you want to just take 7 minutes for a closing statement and detail the answers to that question while you're at it, as to what assets you bring to the board in terms of experience or skills or whatever assets you would like to list. And Keith Tatum, would you start?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you. I do want to thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to be here to meet you and to speak to you. This is pretty important. A lot of times people kind of run for offices, and they're really kind of looking at the school board as being, a stepping stone to something else. I have never looked at joining the school board as the step along the way to something else, because my kids are direct beneficiaries of the work that this district does. And for me, there's no greater privilege than to contribute to the success of the next generation. My kids, your kids, that's all of our kids together. And so that's what really drives me and motivates me. And so being able to take the things that I have learned professionally and academically and to bring them to bear for the benefit of our children, that really excites me. That's energizing. And I look forward to joining some already fantastic existing board members and putting my skills and abilities with theirs. I think that the sum is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think that there's synergy involved when folks who are like-minded and share a similar mission and a vision get together and work to collaborate and combine their ideas and to come up with things that individually we never could have dreamed were possible. So my skill, I have over 20 years of public service in serving the community, serving nonprofits, and working for the state of Kansas. Service is what drives me. I'm a huge fan of the servant leadership style, and being able to use what I have in order to empower and develop other people is a big part of what drives and motivates me. And that just reminds me, one of the other hats that I used to wear. I worked for several years ago. I worked for the Kansas State Department of Education, and I was the director of the Kansas Mentors program. And talk about being immersed in an environment that is fully focused on empowering other people, particularly young people. That really motivates me, and I believe that my work on the 501 school board will be germane to that, will be quite like that in the fact that I will be working to put policies and practices into place that benefit the lives of young people in the Topeka community. So I don't have an opponent. I'm running unopposed. But that doesn't mean that I need for everyone to just stay home and not vote. So please, I do ask for your vote. I'm the only name on the ballot for my seat. But instead of skipping over it, I need for everybody to check that box for Keith Tatum. And I appreciate the support in advance. And I'm gonna make it a priority to work hard and to leave the 501 school district in a better place than it was before I got there. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Williams.
Okay. Technical issue. So you mind repeating the question again?
No, I do not mind. It's just closing comments, so anything you want to say. However, we are trying to answer a question that was posed as to what assets you bring to the Board of Education, such as your education or background or experiences or skills. So if you want to weave that into your closing comments, that would be great.
Okay, well, assets that I bring to the board, I'm youth focused. Have been a youth advocate for close to 52 years. I am a design professional, so I'm a problem solver. I did serve on our facilities long-range planning committee in my previous tenure before I got on the board, and it was part of my involvement with DCAC at the time. I am a people person, and I'm a voice of reason. And one thing I do have that that's because of the fact that I've served 2 previous terms. I've got 8 years of experience, and a lot of that's leadership. I am involved representing our board on 2 national fronts with the National Black National Black Council of School Board Members, as well as the Enough Said Executive Steering Committee. And like I said, I'm the type of person, I listen to everybody's concerns, and at the end of the day, my primary focus is I want our kids to be successful. I was involved in Topeka Public Schools prior to getting on the board. I've continued to be involved. I tutor down at the Juvenile Detention Center. I serve as a mentor. And if the voters decide to go another way, which I hope they don't, but if they do, I will continue to be involved at Topeka Public Schools. So looking forward to November the 2nd to see what the outcome will be. And again, I thank DCAC for having this candidate forum today. A lot of good questions and a lot of good responses. It just goes to show in Topeka Public Schools, we got a lot of great people. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dr. Schumacher, I think that leaves you to close.
Yeah, so I think I come from a unique background as a pediatrician. You know, I've been trained over the last 13 years to be a expert in childhood health and development. And, you know, but I'm still humbled that I have in my professional life things to learn every day, things to learn medically, but also socially from patients and from parents. And I think that's one of the things I would bring, you know, along with being youth focused. And I agree with Reverend Williams. You know, one of my primary goals is to advocate for children and families, especially the ones that, you know, struggle to advocate for themselves for whatever reasons. But I think also acknowledging that I have a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn personally, professionally, and in this role, I think I would have a lot to learn. And I think acknowledging is the first step. But then I'm going to continue to steal Dr. Williams, those 3 C's. I'm going to be committed, consistent, and constant in working towards shaping that vision of Topeka Public Schools and building and supporting the framework that'll put us on that path. You know, I don't necessarily have experience on a public school board, but I do have board experience and organizational experience, and I think that'll help me. But as far as the day-to-day operations of schools, I have a lot to learn. But it kind of goes back to the last question. I was thinking as Reverend Williams and Mr. Tatum were responding, you know, all 3 of us, and I hope even our you know, my 2 opponents that aren't here tonight, I think we have a common goal, and that's to better our youth and to prepare them for success after they get done with high school. And I think with that common goal, you know, disagreements, adversity, a pandemic, there's ways to think creatively, collaborate, and hopefully move forward. And you know, I hope, even though whereas Keith has 0 opponents, I have 2 opponents, and so I hope that no matter who you support, everyone goes and votes on November 2nd, or by November 2nd if you're going to do advanced voting. But I hope that, you know, I can be part of that ship that helps steer and collaborate and reach that common goal.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all the candidates for participating in our forum tonight. We do appreciate you participating in the forum, as well as putting your name in for public office. You know, running for office and holding a public office brings its challenges, and we do appreciate you sacrificing your time for both the campaign and possibly on the board in support of public schools. So thank you so much again. And thank you also to those from the public who attended tonight's program. I do hope the program helps you get acquainted with the candidates. And in terms of the November 2nd election, if you are unsure whether you have a candidate in the race or if you need any kind of information on voting, you should contact the Shawnee County Election Office. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, as well, for your opening comments. And we'll be seeing you sometime.